Hello everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today for part 2 of my commentary discussing Ebony K. Williams' statements about dating blue-collar men as a white-collar professional woman. I'm also going to discuss a video shared with me by one of my IG followers, Veronica Alvarez, and in this interview, Martell and Carlos discussed the show, Love Marriage Huntsville, and his marriage to Melody. I'll be referencing some of your comments from part 1 throughout this essay. So to recap my previous message, I said that a lot of black people use their degrees and incomes to feel better than other black people. I also stated that Ebony Williams may have some hidden resentment and contempt towards black men because she's had to work very hard for the same amount of respect a non-black woman gets just for existing. And I also mentioned that black love, in my opinion, is conditional and is based upon appearances and socioeconomic status, because black people essentially do not love each other, nor do they trust each other at this point. And at the same token, some black people use non-blacks to elevate their social status by way of having biracial children and or using their non-black partners for economic opportunities. So for those of you who are familiar with my channel, you guys know how I feel about successful women dating or marrying men who are not on their socioeconomic level and the pitfalls of doing this. I talked about MARTEL Melody. I discussed Whitney Williams and her ex-husband Kevin Hunter. I talked about Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. I even mentioned Shantiri Weems, who hired her husband to drive the bus for her daycare center, and she ultimately ended up shooting him because she found out that he was molesting some of the children who were in her care. Of course, she ended up losing everything. So from what we've observed and witnessed throughout time, a lot of black men and men in general, but I'm going to focus on black men because I'm a black person. A lot of black men in general believe that once their girlfriends or wives become more successful or has equal power within the relationship, his position within the relationship is not as secure. So a lot of times these dudes try to secretly sabotage the relationship or try to wrestle power from the woman by cheating, sulking, being disrespectful, and being abusive. Nels, who was one of my most engaged and loyal subscribers, said she was married to a bus driver with no education, and she has a degree and she's working in corporate America, and she's like, trust me, don't do it. They'll resent you and they'll hurt you on purpose to knock you off your pedestal. And she loves blue collar men. All her uncles were blue collar, so she was surprised that this happened to her. So in my opinion, the men's objective in these situations where they're married to women who have a higher status than them, a lot of times their objective is to make the woman feel guilty for her success and to psychologically manipulate her into submitting to him by thinking that she's at fault for trying to be the best that she can be. I'm very aware that there are many layers to this conversation because of culture, race, and capitalism, but I believe that the crux of the issue between black American men and women is a shared resentment and a distrust in a culture that has been bastardized by capitalism. A lot of successful black men feel like making it means marrying a non-black woman. In other words, for some black men, any black woman, successful or not, is like a bus driver in terms of social status. And black women can sense this resentment or this contempt, which is why a lot of black women are adamant about providing themselves with a lifestyle that many black men either don't want to provide for them or don't think that they deserve, because black women are not the trophy preference in society. So a lot of black women have become deathly afraid of marriage and having children because they do not trust black men to provide and protect during their most vulnerable moments of their lives. I mean, 75% of black women have children out of wedlock. So who can blame them, right? And to read another comment from one of my loyal subscribers, Candy said the following. She said, great commentary as per usual. This topic is complex with a lot of layers, but I think you tackled it very well. I think that women who are the breadwinners should do as Rihanna and Oprah did, partner with someone they like and have compatible lifestyles with. I think the mistake a lot of career-oriented women make is choosing to believe that somehow they should have an equal professionally or financially versus an equal at life. I'm not saying marry down as Mary J did, but I'm saying that all of the professional black men I know are either married young or they married out of their race, okay? This is important because a lot of black women spend their 20s building careers, and by the time they decide that they want to settle down, a lot of the men they like already married, or they have a preference that excludes them. Former President Barack Obama almost married out, but the Asian woman turned him down. A lot of women are holding themselves to the Lori Harvey standard of being a prize, but there's no winner to take him home. And many women don't want to be alone. So it's a catch-22. On one hand, they don't want to settle, but on the other hand, the guys they want don't want them. My mom's former husband and father to my 2 brothers is Nigerian. Everyone is taught that financial security matters and education is the best status symbol one can possess in this culture, more than looks, and it's different in Black American culture, okay? However, I know plenty of Nigerians who are entrepreneurs who started out as taxi drivers, professional scammers, and so forth in order to provide for their families. I know a lot of Nigerian women who have fancier titles than their husbands, and there's a sense of pride in this accomplishment. There's a sense of pride in this accomplishment, not resentment from the man. No, I don't think a woman should settle, but I also don't believe in torturing oneself. I've seen a lot of professional women resent uneducated, happily married women. And Candy closes out by saying, this is really layered and I can see both sides of this. Now, speaking of Nigerians, another one of my subscribers, Fatima, said this about Nigerian culture. She said, this is why I love listening to other points of view. When I first heard what Ebony said, I saw nothing elitist about it, or wearing your degrees as a shield, or to get white people's approval, etc. She sounded like my Nigerian parents who stressed education and the need to always strive for the best. It wasn't about being better than someone, but rather than being the best you can be. It was about starting from nothing and making something of yourself and not being complacent. There was nothing elitist about them as they were quite down to earth. They just respected education and saw it as a tool to advance and better oneself. I can see why you would think as you do, though from your point of view, never thought of it that way. And in my response to Fatima, I shared the differences between Black American and Nigerian culture. Nigerians are largely ethnocentric, with a focus on building and growing and strengthening the family throughout the generations. This used to be the case in the Black community, but since the 1960s, when Blacks were allowed to integrate with their masters, their dynamic and focus has changed. Our dynamic and focus has changed. In the Black American community at large, now the goal is to have as little responsibility for others as possible, or toward others as possible, because in America, responsibilities, especially children, are expensive. And Black Americans have adopted consumerism or hypercapitalism as their culture. So the focus is on becoming more American by way of spending Black dollars with white establishments and corporations to validate our existence in society, okay, or on this planet in general. So this was a trade-off that the U.S. government and Democratic Party required to protect Black Americans from Jim Crow terrorism. White terrorism wasn't just about complexion. It was more so economic warfare. And when Black people were socioeconomically self-sufficient, it posed a threat to the white power structure, which resulted in jealousy, fear, and ultimately tragedy. Okay, so after the 1960s, Black people were brainwashed into adopting the American capitalist ideology, which is about consumerism and false scarcity, which is an oxymoron. But a lot of successful Black people feel like if they don't have a certain type of lifestyle, they didn't make it per se, okay? And the focus is no longer on children or family or community like it is in immigrant cultures. The focus is on individual aspirations and goals and successes. Unfortunately, American capitalistic culture is corrosive and poisonous to traditional family structures because traditional families tend to share resources, they share homes, and they don't spend as much money as an independent woman or a man looking to impress other independent adults with their nice clothes, nice cars, and nice homes that they live in by themselves. American culture has always been individualistic, and after the Civil Rights Movement, Black Americans have adopted individualism to the detriment of their families and their overall socio-political power. Millions of Hispanics are currently being bused into the country because Hispanics are more family and children oriented than U.S. citizens. And the U.S. government needs citizens to keep having babies to maintain the Federal Reserve Ponzi scheme. So currently, 44% of Black American women of childbearing age have no children. So essentially, to be honest, these Black women are of little to no value to the U.S. economy in the long term because every society needs children to thrive. So if you're not having children as a demographic, you're no longer important to the economy and you will not have your needs addressed by the politicians who are campaigning for your votes. You're now going to be on the back burner because your demographic or your people are not having babies that could pour into the economy. So if Black people want to maintain their social political power, they have to have more children. And a lot of us don't want to have children because children cramp our style. Children are expensive. Children are difficult to raise in a capitalistic society because in a capitalist society that's patriarchal, the focus is on making money and not raising kids, right? So yeah, every society needs children to thrive. And unfortunately, many successful Black men and women believe that having a baby will cramp their lifestyle because the focus is on individual freedom, not building and strengthening the community and family. Another point is that people who are very successful have a very different mindset than people who are just content getting by with the bare minimum. I know I got frustrated with my exes in the past who were not meeting their full potential. And when I tried to help them, they lashed out at me and got angry. So ultimately, I got bored with the relationship and I left them alone. In my previous commentary, I stated that Ebony Williams would make the life of a bus driver a living hell because she would resent him for not having the ambition to utilize his time to make their lives easier so that he wouldn't have to work as hard, right? Or at the very least, the financial rewards for his time would be greater. A lot of ambitious people have a different relationship with time than people who are okay with the middle. Ambitious people tend to place a lot of value on their time while the average worker is at the mercy of the labor market. So they're okay with settling for whatever someone else tells them is their worth. And this is frustrating to a type A personality who likes to be in charge. And it's really hard for a type A woman to be with a type A man because these are two dominant personality types. So somebody has to stand down. And a lot of women who have worked hard for their successes either don't want to stand down or they end up with an ambitious loser like Mary J. Blige's ex-husband or Wendy Williams' ex-husband. A lot of Black American men who marry successful Black women have a pimp mentality because that's the only way they feel masculine and secure about their position within the relationship. Another one of my viewers named WS made a comment that said the following: I dated a literal bus driver for a short time. He was non-Black. He worked a lot but not hard. He had a lot of side gigs to make ends meet, and that was fine for him. I do pretty well but not without struggles, i.e. a single mom in school for years on years, but I finished. He turned me off because he had 2 opportunities to attend school for free and didn't finish either time. He didn't have any children, it was just him. I felt like he didn't deserve me or he wasn't a good fit for me because of the hard work I put in to get to the other side for myself and my child, and he couldn't even do it for himself. The mindset of someone who sacrifices to get where they want to be is different from someone who is content with whatever. Now, the fact that W had some resentment towards her boyfriend because of her work ethic and her successes does validate some of the concerns that men have about being left behind once their woman evolves and grows. And this brings me to the interview I saw with Martell and Carlos King. Shout out to Veronica Alvarez again for sending me this video, because I really wasn't checking for anything that that blockheaded dildo was trying to say. So Black women are told to not build up Black men, because once we do this, we'll get spit on, we'll get cheated on, and these men that we've built up will think that they're better than us. And a lot of times when Black women build up Black men, they end up resenting the woman who was with them when they had nothing, because apparently in the man's mind, if the woman was worth anything in the first place, she would have been with a man who had more to offer than he did. So the Build-A-Bear woman has no value to the man she's building, because the fact that she has to be with a man who is broke is a representation of her social status and her value. Okay? So men are more concerned about social status and clout than women. Trust me when I tell you this. Now, men on the other hand, when they're with a woman who has more than them, they're afraid of their woman growing and becoming more successful, because they think that she'll attract more attention from men on her new level, which makes him look paltry in comparison. They also understand that a woman with her own resources who is self-sufficient is less inclined to put up with abuse, disrespect, and neglect at the hands of a man who wants to break her down because she's more accomplished. This is what happened with Mary J. Blige. Okay? So in Carlos King's discussion with Martell on Quintessential Gentleman, Carlos said he understood why Martell felt some kind of way about Melody in the relationship. Carlos said that from his observation and experience, when a lot of Black women become successful, they tend to let go of their partner's hand and pretty much abandon the relationship for the sake of personal aspirations, which is understandable from my perspective, because from what I said earlier, a lot of Black women doggedly seek external validation through career accomplishments and money, because they're looking for the social respect and validation which has not been afforded to them because of their race and their gender. Remember, Black women are not the prize. They're not the trophies. They're not preferences. So a lot of Black women are determined to get that respect by their own hand, by working hard, going to school, and basically paying for the lifestyle that they want. Over a year ago, I said that Martell was furious with Melody because he felt like he wasn't good enough for her. In Martell's mind, the more success that they attained, the more Melody wanted to do to build her empire. So I said that Martell used Arion to punish Melody for making him feel like he wasn't the most important thing in her life. In Martell's mind, Melody was self-centered, and she was more concerned about her individual accomplishments and social status than she was in making him happy. Okay? Essentially, Martell wanted Melody to seek validation from him, and Melody sought validation from her own personal accomplishments. And that was an issue. Okay? Over a year ago, I also said that Arion made Martell feel like he was the most important thing in the world, while Martell always knew that Melody could and would walk away if she wasn't happy. Arion has been unhappy with Martell for almost a decade, yet she ain't going nowhere, right? Martell wanted that type of blind loyalty and stupidity from Melody. But before I get into Martell's ass, I'm gonna say this, okay? Around 10 years ago, I read the biography of Sam Cooke, who was a very famous R&B singer from the 1960s. At the age of 33, Sam Cooke was set up by an Asian prostitute and killed in a janky motel right before Christmas while his wife and children were at home. A few months after his funeral, his widow, Barbara Cooke, married his best friend, Bobby Womack. In fact, I believe that Barbara brought Bobby to Sam's funeral wearing Sam's clothes and his jewelry. To me, one of the most tragic things about Sam's life was the state of his marriage when he died. At the end of his life, his wife hated him. She despised him with every fiber of her being. At first, I couldn't get it because, Sam was handsome, rich, charming, intelligent, ambitious. Like, what was the problem? But after a while, I realized that Barbara grew to hate Sam because he treated her with contempt and disrespect, like she wasn't good enough for him. And Sam was an Aquarius, and Barbara was a Leo. So the idea of treating a Leo like a pedestrian or peasant was very offensive and difficult for Barbara to live with. So Sam treated his wife like a pedestrian, like a peasant, which was really hard for her ego to deal with. Barbara put up with physical abuse, mental abuse, side babies, cheating, and no matter how hard she tried to prove her value to him, they were not in alignment because his energy was too big for her. Sam was born ahead of his time. Okay, he was a visionary, an intellect, an activist, a businessman, and he was married to a black woman born during Jim Crow, only 2 generations from slavery. So Barbara's station or her social status could not encompass all that Sam wanted to do and explore in his lifetime. Marriage in general was too small for him, and I think Sam Cooke's North Node is in the 11th house of society and the collective. So energetically, Sam's energy was too big for her. He was too advanced spiritually or socially, and his wife could not meet his demands or expectations because they were not in alignment spiritually. This is very tragic, okay? So I think that Barbara grew to hate Sam Cooke because of this, and that's why she married his best friend and had a baby with him shortly after he died. Right? While the rest of the world is crying about Sam Cooke, they lost him, he was a visionary, he was a great man, all this stuff. His wife was running around town with different men, getting married to his best friend. She knew him for real, and she hated him for how he made her feel. The way Barbara felt about Sam Cooke, in my opinion, is the way that Martell felt about Melody at the end of their marriage. So over a year ago, I said that Martell was livid with Melody. He wanted to hurt her badly because of her ambitions. And Melody's ambitions made Martell feel like he wasn't good enough for her. Martell and Melody both admitted that Martell was very supportive of Melody in the beginning of their relationship. But once she started to hit her stride in business, he felt like she wouldn't need him anymore. And, he wasn't the primary focus of her life, which is challenging for anybody to deal with, right? Much less somebody with a personality disorder like Martell. I've always understood why Martell cheated. I understood why he was doing it. I understood why he thought the way he did. And I always said that he was entitled to feel the way that he did. But my problem with Martell was the fact that he literally tried to destroy Melody because he couldn't control her. Like, he tortured her. And I think he wanted her to have a mental breakdown so that she wouldn't have the capacity to do what she's doing now. In his discussion with Carlos, Martell said that in spite of having a 5-year affair and a baby on Melody, he did not want to divorce her. Okay? So essentially, he wanted to punish her and torture her to mold her into the woman he wanted her to be. In season 2, Martell said to Melody, when they were outside with the Fletchers, "You're still not the woman I want you to be in my household." Okay? So he didn't want to divorce her. A lot of black men try to break a woman down to rebuild her up into the woman he wants her to be a personal servant and a sex slave with no identity or autonomy outside of the relationship. Slave masters used to do the same thing. It's called buck breaking. Okay? So slave masters would rape the women and the men to psychologically break them and condition them for a life of slavery. That's how a lot of black men treat black women, in my opinion. Okay? So my problem with Martell is that he was cool with Melody being ambitious when it benefited him. And in Melody's mind, she was doing the right thing because her success benefited the whole family. Right? She was sharing her successes with the entire family. That's why nobody knew that Martell didn't have the builder's license. Because I think Melody was also trying to protect Martell's image and reputation, right? She was like, whatever I accomplished by myself can be shared for the whole family. It's benefiting the whole family. I'm working for us. And Martell could not see that because he was selfish, insecure, self-centered, and a narcissist, okay? So Martell was cool with Melody being ambitious when it benefited him. And Melody was like, okay, I'm doing what we both agreed to do. We had a plan. So what's the problem? Martell does not have the capacity to do what Melody did. Didn't have it when they were married, and he doesn't have it now, right? So Martell was cool with Melody being a boss because it made him look like a boss. But when she started to eclipse him in power and influence, he got threatened and threw another woman in her face as to say, see, this is how I want you to be when it benefits me. And Melody told Martell in season 2, she's not a light switch you can turn off and on when it suits you. Melody was playing the mommy role, the wife role, and the entrepreneur role, all of which are very challenging to do alone. Imagine juggling all 3 responsibilities at a high level at the same time. Last year I did a Venus sign synastry reading for Martell Melody, and I said that Martell Melody had Venus square Venus, which means that their value systems don't align, and they loved each other in the way they felt best. So Martell loved Melody the way he thought she should be loved, and Melody loved Martell the way she thought he should be loved. Neither of them wanted to compromise. However, Martell's block-headed ass also admitted that Melody was still cooking for the kids, still going to church on Sundays, cleaning the household, doing the girls' hair, taking vacations with the family, had 4 kids with him. She was doing everything he asked for while Martell was having his affair. So instead of leaving work early to make dinner for the kids and get the household chores out the way so that Melody would have more time and energy to give to him, Martell decided to go to hotel rooms with his mistress. So he's full of shit, okay? Martell only cares about controlling Melody to make sure that she can benefit him in some capacity because he's very insecure. And this happens a lot of time in Black relationships because the respect between the genders has been eroded due to the drug epidemic, Black fathers abandoning their children, sexual abuse, domestic violence, mental health issues. Like, we have a lot of shit to clean up in our community. And with these weak ass gender conversations, we're trying to plug a boat with many holes in it, one at a time. Black people are blaming each other for their collective self-hatred instead of the system that we're married to, right? We invested in this system, which is largely responsible for our toxic interracial dynamics. So we're pointing the finger at each other instead of the materialistic, capitalistic culture we've chosen to adopt. At the end of the day, Black people have to answer a serious question. A serious question. Is having everything exactly the way you want in your life as an individual more important than making sacrifices to benefit the collective? Because guess what? With artificial intelligence, automation, and mass migration from Latin America and Asia, you're essentially being replaced right now, okay? While we're arguing amongst each other about how much we hate each other and can't build together and aren't worth anything to each other, you're being replaced politically, economically, socially, and culturally, Black people. Let's keep this all the way 1,000. There are now 65 million Hispanics in the United States and only 40 million Black people who continue to have abortions, right? And who continue to not get married. And to be honest, I think some of us are okay with that. I think some of us have so much self-hatred towards other Black people that we're okay with being replaced. We're okay with being irrelevant or redundant, right? We're cool with integration until we can't get a job. We're cool with interracial dating until biracial children are chosen to represent Black people as a race and we don't have as much opportunities as we would otherwise, right? So we have to be serious about what's going on right now. There are so many layers to unpack. This is not just about class warfare. This is spiritual warfare. We are at war with ourselves spiritually. When you hate yourself as a people, when you don't like each other, you will create babies or give birth to children who don't like you either. That's why there's so many children killing their parents these days, because they were born out of lust and hatred, period. I'm always going off on a deep end. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to reading your feedback. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.